Now we're ready to tackle a bit that has probably caused woodworkers more frustration than any other bit in existence. For a long time in my career, I told people this was the most difficult bit to set up in all of woodworking, and when you mastered this one, you could feel pretty smug about it. Well, having studied it, we came up with a method that makes this really a fairly straightforward bit to set up once you understand the geometry of it. And what we're going to show you here today is a technique for setting this bit up that dramatically reduces the amount of scrap wood you'll need to make it work and makes all that frustration go away. And we call that method X marks the spot. What happens is this bit has a geometric center to it that I have drawn, and I'm going to ask my cameraman to zoom in on it here. Right there, that little point, which is halfway down this tooth, is called the geometric center of the joint, meaning that that point on the board, if you were to look at the center of the wood and the edge, it's exactly the same from here to here or from here to here. Well, if we were to place that point so that it fell right there on the bit, theoretically the joint would be perfect. Now, how do we do that? That's where the secret. This is it. X marks the spot. Now, I've got a tool here that is actually an oversized representation. We've marked the center of it, and this is the profile that it cuts. This piece represents the fence, and this piece the table. And I want you to look at the X when I put it up against it, and notice that it falls right there. And it happens to be the same if it's there or here. Board laying down, board standing up. And that's how we're going to set up this bit. Now, we're going to actually do it. We're going to use the large version. This is the 1420. It sets up exactly the same as the small version. We're going to use the larger one just so that you can see it a little bit easier on video. I've placed that bit in the router, and now we're going to mark our wood to identify it. I'm going to use maple and walnut so that you can see the joint easier, but I'm going to do the setup with the maple piece just for contrast. The secret to it is a 45-degree square. Any method that you can that will produce a 45-degree line. You want to place that square right up against the edge so that, just like on my oversized piece here, I go from the corner at a 45-degree angle. And I use a very sharp instrument. I'm using a dark Sharpie here, which I like. I turn the part around and do it again. And I've drawn an X where each leg of the X goes right to the corner, then at 45 degrees. That X right there marks the spot that is the geometric center of that bit. Now then, we're going to clear off our router table here, and we're going to take our piece, set it down. We're going to just kind of rough this into position here. And we're going to side along the bit. I'm going to stand over here on the outfeed side and kind of close one eye and look down here and watch that X. And I'm going to rotate that board. I'm going to raise and lower the bit and move the fence in and out till I get that crosshair right in the middle of that point from there to there. Then I'm going to lay it down and see if this point shifts from left to right or up and down. If it does, then I wasn't really centered. And I'm going to keep adjusting it a little bit on the fence and a little bit on the height until I can go from here to here, here to here, and I see exactly the same thing when I'm looking at it from the end. So I'm going to do that right now, and I'm going to start with it quite a ways out of position. We'll relocate and see if we can't show you what that looks like. Now we're going to adjust the bit, and I'm going to start by intentionally misadjusting it. I'm going to crank it up too high. And I want you to note that the crosshair on our board should touch right there, right in the middle of that tooth, but it doesn't. And when I turn it, you can see that it doesn't occur in the right position. So I'm going to lower that bit back down, a little too low, bring it back up, until that point is right on that edge, just like that. And you'll notice when I turn it. Now, my fence was pretty close, but I'm going to move it intentionally. Here's the fence too far back. You can see that the crosshair is too far back. Now I'll move the fence too far forward. There's too far forward, and you'll see that the point doesn't occur at the right spot on the tooth. So now I'll move my fence to the correct position. My crosshair is right in the middle of the tooth, right on the edge of it, and when I lay the board down, it stays the same. That means we're very, very close. Now you might need to do a little bit of fine-tuning beyond this, but do it in very small increments. Perhaps the smallest amount you can possibly move it. And if you raise the bit, remember, if the bit comes up, the fence has to move back. If the bit goes down, the fence moves forward. And you're always going to move it about the same amount. So if you lower your fence bit a 32nd, you're probably going to want to move your fence a 32nd of an inch forward. So that is the X marks the spot method. And let's see how we do some cutting now. Now that we've got our bits set, we're going to actually make our cut. Before we get started, I want to remind you of a few things. First of all, we want to make sure our fence is really tight and that all our router settings, all our knobs and whatnot are secure. You don't want any movement. This bit is quite large and it requires a very firm setup. Also, your speed control. This bit, the larger one of the lock miters, should not turn any faster than about 15,000 RPM. So make sure you've turned it down. If you have any question about how fast you should run a bit, Woodline offers a speed control chart that you just hold the bit up against and they'll tell you. Those are available on our website, or you can give us a call. Now, I've got a good solid setup block. One of the advantages of the Woodline setup block is I can hold down, in, and forward with great security. So I've got a really good grip on this board here. I'm going to make this in one pass. With the lock miter bits, as with most joinery bits, you have to make the entire cut in one pass. You can't make it in multiple passes. So steady, smooth cutting action is important. Of course, we're going to need our safety glasses, so let me get those. Okay, now I've got my safety glasses. We are ready to go. There we have a nice cut. I'll make the other one. Now I could reset my push block by moving this block to the other end, but I'm just going to use another one that I already have set up. It's handy to have a couple of these. Again, good solid setup. Now we can test our fit. And what do you know? One great looking joint, comes together quite nicely, nice sharp edge, the corners meet properly. This is the way the lock miter bit should work. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about fine tuning. Occasionally, using the X marks a spot method, you might have to fine tune it a little bit, but only move it a very small amount. And you have to do it in a certain way. If you raise the bit, you need to move the fence backwards and about the same amount. So if you raise the fence, if you raise the bit up a 32nd, you need to remember to move the fence back a 32nd, and vice versa. They move about the same amount. So that's a great cut. Now, another thing that might depend on the way you're doing your project. If you need this corner to be razor sharp like it is right now, then you need to absolutely fine tune that bit and be very careful with your cutting, because what you can wind up with is one side protruding just a little more than the other, maybe a little overhang, if you don't have it adjusted properly. However, if you're going to put even a slight round over, such as 1/8 of an inch or something like that, on this to kind of ease that edge a little bit, then don't worry so much about any overhang that might occur, because the 1/8 inch round over bit will forgive any sin you might make or any misalignment. Now, there's one other little trick that I'd like to talk to you about. With the lock miter bit, and with any bit that does full jointing, meaning that it cuts all the surface, this kind of a problem that I'm about to talk about can occur. When we're making that cut, on the infeed side of the fence, we've got a large portion to push against. However, this bit produces a very sharp edge, and as we're pushing up against the fence and we're transferring that pressure from the infeed to the outfeed side, that edge may not be sufficient to support the pressure. So what we'll get is a little bit of snipe at the end right here. Now, there's a couple ways to do that. You can make your board a little longer than you need it and just cut that piece off. I'll do that if I'm in a hurry. Or you can take another scrap of wood that is the appropriate length, and using double stick tape, tape it to that edge so that it acts against the fence and allows you to maintain that proper spacing as you go through it. Now, that same idea works in the vertical. Get the other board here. The vertical, that same sharp edge occurs, and you can get that snipe when it drops down on the outfeed side. And again, just use a carrier board, double stick tape to it, and that will support it. There's just a couple little tricks on how to get great looking lock miter joints and how to set up a bit just that easy. Now let's summarize the lock miter bit. The lock miter bit is used to make 90-degree joints. To set it up requires that we line the center of the joint with the center of the bit. To do that, we mark, using a square, we mark an X on the end of the board like this, identifying that spot right there, which becomes the geometric center. We put our board down, turn our bit till it's all the way out, and sight down from the outside edge. We align the fence and that point until it falls halfway down that tooth right on the edge. And we rotate our board up and down while watching that point. It should not move in or out or up or down. If it does, we adjust the fence. If we raise the bit, we move the fence back. If we bring the fence forward, obviously we have to lower the bit a little bit. Do it in very small increments. When you're ready, run your wood using a good solid setup. And be aware that your board can snipe at the end of the cut. That snipe is caused by the sharp point of the board not being able to support the pressure required and it crushing the fibers. We get away from that by either using a carrier board, double stick tape to it, like so, or we make our board just a little bit longer than we need it and we cut it off. If you'll use those techniques, you'll get great looking miter joints every time.